So I would like to welcome everyone to our meeting that sums up a beautiful week with our wonderful guest, an outstanding humanist and multimedia artist, Mieke Bal, whose lectures we had the opportunity to listen to at our university and whose exhibition, Don Quixote, can be seen in Lublin until April 20. But first of all, I would like to welcome our guest, yes. So, dear Mieke, I would like to speak with you about your work as humanist and an artist, as well as about your Don Quixote. I suggested the following title for our interview: Art and Today's World, a humanist in the gallery. So let's start with your academic activity, which is a part of humanities, the essence of which is a broad look at man, the world around him, as well as questions about the meaning of our existence, about human identity, but also about openness, imagination, creativity, and breaking boundaries. It may sound a bit pompous, but a true humanist is someone who we could call the conscience of the world, someone who thinks independently, who does not allow himself to be controlled, and who forces others to think, often in a critical way as well. In today's flood of mass media, overstimulation and numbness that they cause, it seems that such a humanist is needed by people, but at the same time is not very convenient for the authorities. Corporations enforcing consumerism, imposed ideals of beauty, behavior, happiness, etc., etc. So, do you think it is still possible for a humanist to be needed by today's world, but in such a way that this world, people, feel the need to listen to the voice of a humanist?
Thank you, and thank you all, Shinkuye, that you came here, and I hope we have a nice meeting, the last meeting of this week. I am very committed to what you call me a humanist, and I don't know if that's the right word, because a humanist is a sort of a political vision that has a past, and that goes back to a long time. And for me, I'm a human scientist. I'm working in the human sciences, and that is practicing what we call the human sciences, and that's literature and fields of study, literature, culture, art, and exhibition curating. And the way the cultural heritage of these artistic cultural areas function in and contribute to social processes now, alive. And for me, that is very important. So if I am a humanist, I'd rather call it a human scientist, someone who studies the human cultural production and what it means today. How old it is doesn't matter. Don Quixote goes back 6 centuries, I think, or 5, and is still actual. We'll talk more about that. But for me, it is really important that the role of a human sciences specialist in the current world is to open up and explain what the point is of literature and art and these fields that we study, music. What is the point for society? And I think that is where what I do comes together with the world.
So, thank you.
Is that a good answer?
Yes, of course, and wonderful. So, but now we are in a university library.
Right.
Yes, among people and books in an open space where everything is visible and freely available. I would like to talk to you about art, which is not visible in this space. Mm-hmm. but it is present in the books that surround us. You are a scholar in humanities, science, yes, who started with books as an object of research. So I'm thinking about your book from 1974 on French popular novel.
Yes.
Yes, but
long time ago.
Yes, but it's still a very, very important and wonderful book. So later you started writing scientific papers and books on visuality in literature and on visual arts. And you are also a creator, an artist. So I know you've written and talked about it many times, how it all started, why you started creating, became a researcher and an artist at the same time. Just as an example, I caught your lecture from yesterday about time and Cassandra, or the preface from your book, Image Thinking, Art Making as Cultural Analysis, published in 2022. Where you explained that your research was enriched and deepened by addition of audiovisual sources to the printed materials in libraries. So I would like to ask you how the scientific background supports your artistic project.
Well, that's the key question, really. My artistic work, or my making films, making videos, started with a social occasion. It's very silly. I had a neighbor whom I saw with a broken arm, and I said, "Hey, what happened to you?" I didn't know the man at all. And he said, "Well, I was working during the night, and I fell from the roof, and I broke my arm." I said, "Oh, how horrible. Come on in and let's talk about it." And we became friends for life. We are still friends, and this is more than 20 years ago. And the reason that I found that important is that I got to be with the people instead of reading about the people. And for me, that is the important thing. The art making, as we now call it, is an encounter with the people that we are supposed to study. I was supposed to study this other culture. It was an Islamic family, and this other culture, I cannot study it in a book that has been in press for 5 years, and it is sitting in a library, and that is not an encounter. And so I went and met the family, and this is how it started. So this encounter is the most important thing in the so-called art making. And then it became acknowledged as art, which I did not expect and didn't even try to search, but it was entering in the world of people who have a different life, different convictions, different religions, entering in their world, encountering them as a meeting that made sense. And this is how I got to know more about that other culture than I would have from books. So the books are useful, but not enough. It's the people that I want to encounter. And we had so much fun with those people, still do, that I understood the gain to be gotten from that encounter with people rather than just books.
So it's great. So I'm wondering if it is still possible for you to separate your artistic and academic activity, or they already so fused that they constitute a tool for researching and describing the world, responding to its problem today. So I'm referring here to your lectures from Monday and yesterday, in which you compared the creative process in science and in research and art, pointing out their common elements. So could you expand on this topic, say a little bit more about creativity in different areas of your activity?
Yeah, that's, for me, it's very important. Creativity, you know, as I said before, we expect artists to be more intellectual, but we don't expect intellectuals to be more creative. You have to be, because only when you are creative can you come up with novelty, with new ideas. And this is the whole point, that the new ideas require creativity, and if you don't allow yourself to do that, if you're just following a method and rigidly applying the method, then you're never going to come up with new ideas. You just have some new knowledge maybe, but new ideas require creativity. And that, I think, is totally crucial. And for me, that has been a discovery, really. When I started this first film about the neighbor, I realized how important it is to be actually thinking with them, and rather than about them, and to come up with ideas that help to understand better this. In this case, this was this different culture. And so for me, the creativity is a totally indispensable aspect of intellectual work as much as of artistic work. So I will never separate the two. And I will not say, now I'm an artist, no longer an academic. No, no, no. I'm still an academic, I'm still an intellectual worker, and I work with the people about whom I'm supposed to do research. And that makes it important that, in the sense that creativity is an aspect of coming up with novelty, with new ideas. And that is what we don't train our students enough to do. We say, oh, you have to follow that, and this is the method, and this is the source, and you have to do that. But let them come up with new ideas, and then those sources become more meaningful. Yeah. The sources are important, but not because they can be just picked up and applied. No, they are part of the whole baggage that we creatively interact with. And that's, for me, a very important thing. And I think that intellectuals, the best intellectuals I know, are also very creative. And I really appreciate that a lot.
So yes, this is true that the creativity is crucial.
It is.
Absolutely, in every part of life.
Yes.
Not only in science, in arts.
Cooking.
But yes, yeah. Cooking, exactly.
Right.
Resolve the problems to find the solution.
Yeah.
Yes. This is a creativity.
And raising your kids,
yeah.
You have to be creative in that. Otherwise, the kids become sort of confined. You have to make them, also encourage them to be creative and be it with them. And then you get really interesting people coming out of those kids.
Yes. So, at this point of our interview, I would like to speak a little bit more about your artistic creativity. Mm-hmm. So we can move to an imaginary gallery, and we can talk more about your arts. And I would like to take advantage of the fact that we can watch your video installation here in Lublin, and what more, we can read about this project, about Don Quixote, in a book just published. And very interesting, important Polish and English version of text you can find there. And so, before returning to more universal topics, I would like to ask about the media of artistic expression you use. Why video and photography together? Why such intermediate work?
Yeah, that's that's a very challenging point. For me, it began with video. I just bought a camera to interview this family of the guy who had his arm broken. I bought a camera and I put him there and I said, now talk about it, what happened? And I switched on the camera, that's all. Because I'm not an artistic kind of person. I cannot draw or paint, or I don't have those talents at all. But for me, it was important that the video could register interactions with the people that would otherwise remain invisible. And so I added photographs to also have a dynamic between the moving image and the still image, because that is also an important aspect of art making, or the way I see it and do it, is that the moving image is very important. It moves in the sense of making movements, but also moves me because I'm moved by it. But then the photographs stabilize it for a moment. And so when you walk around the gallery here in Labyrinth, you have constantly you see movement. But you also see that row of photographs that is not a row in any linear sense, that is just images on the wall, and those two interact with each other. And so the photography, I don't do the photos, I don't make them, someone else does. Or they're often stills from the videos, and that those still images help. The one thing I find really important, the giving time to art. For me, that is totally crucial, and that started with, I'll talk about that more, to give time to art so that art can do its work. So I don't talk about artworks, but about the work of art, the work that art does, and it does it if you let it. And how can you let it do the work? By giving it time. And for that, the videos require time, of course, but the photos don't. And so there you are, as the viewer, you are able to decide how long you will stand in front of a photo and what you will see and how it can do its work. And I think that is that dynamic between moving and still image is for me is very revealing. And so this is why I chose to add photos to the installation, to the exhibition. The exhibition consists of episodes of moving images, and things happen there. Not always. There is one screen that you see as soon as you come in the gallery, where you see Don Quixote just looking, and he's not saying anything, he's not doing anything. So that is an image that is moving and still. And that dynamic, I think, is what makes it an interesting dialogue between moving and still image.
Yes, I think that this dialogue is also very, very important.
Yes.
Yes. So, but the other things that I would like to ask you is the question of collaboration, because your installation often require collaboration, working with a team. Yes. How do you choose your collaborators? Who are they, and how does this method of work differ from the solitary work of a scholar?
Yes.
It is possible.
Well, first of all, I think it's a misunderstanding that scholars are alone, even in their own study, just alone, the doors closed, they have their computer, they have their books, but the books are also voices. That's other people having opinions, and that counts. So the scholar is not alone. And on the other hand, the collaborators that you need practically, yeah, that's of course an issue, especially in my case, because I never had subsidies for it. So I had to sort of count on the goodwill of people. And I have to say that the one central thing in my career has always been this, I had PhDs, and they came and we had the one-to-one conversations. And at some point I thought, well, I'm constantly saying the same thing to these people. Why don't we group them? And so I started what we ended up calling the theory seminar, a seminar where we met once a month for 4 hours. And the strange thing that happened is people came from all over, from England, Germany, France, Belgium, Spain. They came, and even from Norway, for those monthly sessions. And once I was with this session, and there was a guy who was an art student in Paris. And so I said, do you know people? Because I was going to make a film, and do you know some people who could act? Sure. And he sent me the information, the CV, the photographs of like 5 people. And so I asked them to come and have a conversation. And, you know, the most important one of that first set came and said, do you have internet? Yes. Can I show you something? And he showed me something he had made, some performance. And it was so totally convincing. And I said, choose a role. These are the roles, choose one. You choose because you're such a good actor. And so he said, oh, that's wonderful. And he ended up doing 2 roles in that film. And it was wonderful. And that is how the collaborations began. And then with these other people, they also came and we had discussions and we decided about what was important in the story of the film that I wanted to make. And so I chose the collaborators in the practice. In practice, they come, I meet them, I think that's a good one, this is a good one. And of course, the guy who plays Don Quixote in this project here, he also played in the first fiction film I made, about trauma and psychoanalysis, and he played very well. And then he told me that when he was a child, he had said to his parents, I want to be an actor. And then his uncle, who was at that conversation, said, oh, then you have to play Don Quixote. Why? Because you look like him. Spitting image. He never existed, Don Quixote. But yes, we know that sort of long face, the tall character. And when you see the images in the book also, yes, that's him. But there is no him. There's only this actor. And so this is how this happened. And that was, for me, that was an incredible revelation. And then we were going to look for, how do I find the Sancho Panza? The sort of the guy the servant of Don Quixote. Oh, says Mathieu, the actor. Oh, I have a friend. She's a performance artist. And so, is that okay to have a woman as Sancho? Why not? So the decision is always in collaboration, in dialogue. It's never me alone. And so I said, yeah, I wanted to meet her, and I saw her, and I thought she was wonderful for the role, and I think she does a great job. And so this is another case where the selection, I don't select people, I encounter them. And then I say, yeah, I want you here. And that is very nice. And some of the people in the different project, when we are in a certain place where we need food for the actors, right? When we have several days of shooting, you need to feed them. So we get someone to cook. But that person is also a participant. So she or he also participates in the discussions. Is this okay? Do we do it this way, etc.? And on another occasion, there was we were going to shoot an outside lunch picnic somewhere in Sweden, and then it started to rain. What do? Do you cancel the shoot? No. We just knocked on the first house door that I saw and said, can we please shoot a scene in your house? Yeah, sure. And so that's what we did. And so it happens a lot with these encounters with people, that the chance, the luck decides rather than I.
So never the castings.
Oh, the casting? Well, yeah, no. I have, apparently that's what my actors say, that I have a talent for casting. Yeah. So I do choose people that are really doing very, very well. I remember when we started Madame B, based on or responding to Madame Bovary, there are 3 men in the life of that young woman, Emma, the husband and 2 lovers. How do we do that? Well, Thomas, you play the 3, okay? So we told him to play the 3 men, which he did, and he did it so wonderfully that even an art historian friend whom I showed the film for the first time didn't see that it was the same man. But it was. And there were no, I mean, there was, of course, a makeup artist, but there were no particular tricks. I didn't put a different nose on his face, but he did look different in the 3 roles, very different. And like 10 years older or younger and all those things. This just happened because the casting made that possible. And I do feel that I have a sense for casting. For choosing the right people.
But this is always in a very creative way. This choice, yes?
Yeah, no, that...
This is creativity even during the preparation of film, the production.
Yeah, no, that decision to pick one actor for the 3 men, of course, is a creative act that made it possible for the film to have both the similarity and the difference between these 3 guys visible. And so, yes, I guess I have that creativity in casting, but I'm not an artist in the sense I couldn't draw, I couldn't make an image that is artistic, but I can respond to an image that is artistic, and that is great. Also a form of creativity.
And now I don't know which things to ask you, or about preparation for recording, and how. Do you work on the recorded materials, or perhaps about the location and props for your films? Because both, I think, are very interesting. What is behind the stage, if I can say?
Yeah, there's not one idea. Yeah. Things happen a lot in terms of encounters and chance, luck, and some of the props. You want me to tell about the sword?
Exactly, I'm thinking about this sword. Yeah.
When I started to make Don Quixote, I thought he needs a sword, because that's so typical of the character. Yes. But I was not going to a carnival shop and buy a plastic sword. That would be so vulgar. And speaking of luck, a week before we had planned to go to Spain to start shooting, I was in Helsinki and I got an honorary doctorate honoris causa. And part of the props that were in the ceremony was a sword. Because this ceremony was an allusion to a long history, and so they gave swords of steel. Big, long. Okay, so I said, thank you very much. Could you please immediately send this to Amsterdam by post, because they won't let me have it on the plane. Of course, it's a weapon. And so I had to, I left it there and they sent it, and 2 days later it was in my house. And so when I went to Spain to shoot, I just put it in the suitcase and I checked the suitcase in and it was accepted. And so then you see Don Quixote in the scenes, you see him constantly with that sword. And that is, of course, a very important thing, but that's the major prop in this film. And I think it is really crucial that we have a real sword of steel that you can see, and you can see what he does with it. And at some point they said, we want you in the film. I said, no, I'm not an actress. Oh, yeah, do. And so they forced me, they compelled me to do this little scene that you may have seen, where I take the sword out of his hand and say, stop with that sword. And so that is the only time that I appear in any of my films, is that moment that I had to take the prop away from the actor. And so that is, of course, there are not many props in my films. It's not a big deal because I don't have a richness of props. I take what I really need. And in this case, the sword was really needed, nothing else. And so, for me, that was a wonderful, wonderful coincidence that I got that in Helsinki. And it made total sense in the film. And I still have it in my house with the umbrellas, in the umbrella stand. And so that's one thing. And then other things of preparation. I always have someone who is a little better than I am with the camera. Keeping it stable, for example, for me is a little difficult. And so I asked someone, can you do this? And they do. They are always interested in helping, and they just do the camera work. And then we have the recording, and we have to do the editing. And that is something that I have done, first of all, with Michelle Williams-Kamaker, with whom I've been working on many films. The editing we did together, so I learned from her how to do that. And I was able to do it for a while, and then I kind of lost the technical skills, so I get someone else. And there is always someone who is interested in helping with editing, and then we sit together and I propose, let's do this bit here and take that out, and that sort of decisions I do. I take the decisions, I propose it, but I don't do it technically because I don't have the technical skills. I never went to film school. I have no training in film school. So all these technical things I don't know. I just have to lean on all these wonderful people who are interested in helping. And many come from my theory seminar in all these different countries. There was one guy who came every month from Oslo. And he then he got his doctorate. And he was very happy that he got that. And then he became director of installations and collections in the Munch Museum in Oslo. And so one day I get a message, dear Mieke, how about doing an exhibition from our collection and including your Madame B? I thought, how does he even know about Madame B? How does he know that? But he did. And so that happened, and that became a wonderful curatorial experience, thanks to this guy who had first started as not my student, but a member of my seminar, became a doctor, then became a director, then invited me, and so that's how it goes. And that is all based on creative thinking in encounter and in togetherness. Yeah, exactly. And I think that togetherness is totally crucial.
So, but I would like to ask to you, how do you choose location for your films?
Yeah, that is an interesting issue. It's, on the one hand, it's totally arbitrary because I don't have so many choices. On the other hand, I probably have an eye for casting, but also an eye for locations. So with the Don Quixote, for example, I got an invitation from Sweden, from Växjö, to give a lecture. And when I came, they so much liked the lecture and the whole encounter that there was a guy who was there in art school. He said, can I help with the filming? I said, sure. You know, you do the filming of that scene. And so there is this scene you see in the park of a castle in Sweden where you see these guys in black, the slaves. And that's a really very moving scene. And this student filmed that. The guys were colleagues and students from there. And the park was just the park of a castle where they put me up for the night in that castle. That was like a hotel. So here again, the luck was that invitation to that place, and there the encounter with these colleagues who were willing to do this. I said, would you like to be a slave? Oh yes. and so that's how it worked. And then the other locations in this project that you see here in Labyrinth is in Spain, the south of Spain, where you see in the city, you see Don Quixote being impossibly trying to help, but in fact hampering people. Like he tries to get a baby out of the hands of a mother and a dog. He's doing impossible things because he thinks that he helps people, but he does the opposite. And that city scene was just because I had arranged to go there because I have friends in that city, Murcia, and it became totally important to have the scene in a city with busy people. And so this was another chance thing. And then, you know, the other moments, I thought I needed a busier city, urban scene, so we did one in Paris. And it's funny, but, you know, I needed a second cameraman. And there was this guy who is an artist in Spain, and he said, sure, I'll come. And he came, don't bother to pay my way, I'll do it myself. And I said, why are you doing this for me? He said, well, 10 years ago you wrote an article about my artwork, and that made me so successful that I'm very grateful. I had not even forgotten that I wrote the article. But that's the sort of things that happen. That there is a chance encounter, something that I do because I do it for some other silly reason, and then 10 years later I'm rewarded. And so that's how it goes.
So it seems, it looks amazing. I'm thinking now about the places and languages, because you prepare your films in various places, various countries, different cities, and your actors speak in a different language. And I would like to ask you about the multilingualism in your installation. Yeah. If perhaps this multilingualism of the installation carry additional meaning, and why you decided to use many language in one film.
Yeah, no, that happened when my first fiction-based film was about trauma and psychoanalysis, and the woman who was playing her own part as a psychoanalyst, again, a friend for life, she said, oh, I can do that in English. And so I said, let's try. And we did a little scene in English, and I said, it's artificial. It doesn't work. You can't speak a foreign language. Do it in French. Oh, how do you deal with that? Well, we'll see. And then we had another actress finish. And so this Finnish woman said, oh, I'll do it. But I said, you do it in your own language. And there were children in that film who spoke Dutch. My grandchildren, when they were little, they spoke Dutch. And there was a woman from India. She spoke Hindi, and so it became more and more multilingual. And I thought that was actually a way of showing that language is not the only means of communication, that you can also communicate otherwise with gestures, with facial expressions, and then also with the plot elements. So in that film, there are like 12 languages. There's a scene where the actress was German, so do it in German. Once I had decided to do that, it just worked. And it was, there was Spanish, there was French, there was German, there was English, there was Dutch, and then the Hindi and all sorts of languages. And it sounds like music. It really sounds like encounters between people in other means than language. And so I think that really is a nice vision of language that you get from that. And so then we did one, I think the René Descartes film, that the main character, Descartes, was French, and Queen Christina was Finnish, the actress. And those were the two major roles. They practically played the whole film. And then I started to study these languages a bit, and I realized that in French, the accent falls on the last syllable of the word, and in Finnish, on the first. So you got a rhythmic interaction that is amazing. When you hear it, it's like a concert of these different accents. And I found that so engaging that it became really a principle. People speak their own language, And if they have particular rules in that language, do it. I don't want to interfere with your language.
Yeah, this is absolutely very, very interesting, because the language is always connected to our manner of express oneself. Yes, this is connected always with this manner of describing the word and feel the word, express the feelings. This is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
But if your actors speak French and Finnish
Mm-hmm.
in the same film, do they understand each other? They know what
I make
who
sure that
speak
I make sure that I do by writing a script, and I have the script in the two languages and in English.
Okay.
So I make sure that they do understand each other, and they were so devoted to do a good job, because they were both. It was interesting when I asked Thomas, I said, "Would you like to play the card?" Because Maya, the Finnish actress, had proposed this because she had seen a play on Christina, and she said, "Can we do something like that?" She sent me a link, and yeah, who knows? So I asked Thomas, Thomas Germaine, the actor, would you do Descartes? Oh, yes, but I'm not going to discourse. I'm not going to give lectures on philosophy and all that. I said, no, of course not. You interact with someone, and that's what happens. And so they do understand each other, because I wrote a script. And then in the shooting, when there was a misunderstanding possible, I would first explain, you say this and you say this, and this is the plot element, and it works perfectly.
Yes, I'm trying to imagine this sound of French and Finnish together. Yes,
yeah, I'm going to
yes.
make it possible by sending you the link
Yes, great.
to that film.
It's very promising.
And I think it really works. And it also works in the plot, in the sense that Descartes is a little tired of all the things that he's doing, and then Christina is starting to court him. He wants him to come to Sweden, and he then goes, but he has hesitated so long that it's a little too late in the season, and so when he comes, it's already a bit too cold, and so the encounter between the two is already a little dubious, and then a few weeks later he dies. This really happened. That's where he died. And he died of the flu. At that time, you died of the flu. And so we see that more or less happen, and Christina is devastated, and that's why she then resigns from the throne and goes to Rome. This is also historical. She went to Rome, and that's where she ended her life. And so there's always something that comes from the cultural heritage and the history. So I'm not against history. I'm critical of the dogmatism in historical disciplines, but I'm also very interested in how the past is still in the present, and how that works together. So yes, there are really moments when, and especially in this film on Descartes, moments that you think, is this the philosopher that we have always admired and despised because he was so hyper-rationalistic? No, he was not. He was mad as a hatter. He was totally neurotic. And that you also get to see in the film. So in the film he even goes in psychoanalysis and tells a little bit about his life, and he's impossible, in his irrational moments, and that has to do with the fact that he was abandoned. His mother died when he was 1 year old, and then his father left and dumped the kids with grandmother. And that is, of course, a big abandonment. So Descartes got an abandonment syndrome. That's a neurosis. That you don't dare to link yourself to other people because you're afraid the abandonment will happen again. And that happens a lot. And so this was Descartes' madness. There is a beautiful book about Descartes' madness that I didn't know when I made this film. But a few years later, someone said, "Have you read that book?" No, I had not. And it's by Kichot Lee, and it's called something like Reading Descartes Otherwise. Mad, bad, mad, I don't know, 4 of those adjectives. And it's a wonderful book. And she really lays out what is wrong with him intellectually. And so why do we think he was this hyper-rationalist? He tried to be, but he didn't manage it. And so you get a totally different Descartes, which I think is important if we want to be historically responsible, which in certain ways I do want to be. And then it became a totally different personality.
Yes, and to know who was the man, the human being behind the philosophy, behind our image of philosopher, yes.
Right, exactly.
This is important.
And so his humanity, his human character, his human problems, his madness are very important.
Yes.
And it is in that context that he was able to write the rational arguments that he did. Because of course I had to read everything he ever wrote. But he has a lot to say. But a lot of what he has to say is embedded in that sort of strange, neurotic personality. It's really interesting to see that.
Yes, and to better understand his philosophy too. I think that is important.
Absolutely.
Because often we forgot that behind philosophy, music, artwork, there is a human being.
Right.
Very complex and having various background, various different history behind.
Yes. Yes.
And
it's very important, I think, to realize that also, to recognize your own madness and your own hesitations and your own, you know, uncertainties.
Some problems sometimes to diagnose, auto-diagnosis. Right. Yes, I have the problem with this, so I have to remember about it and try to change perhaps a little bit, or just pay attention.
Right, and that's absolutely what you can learn from this other vision of this philosopher. And making a film, there was no background. I don't think there was an earlier film about him. To make a film based on the knowledge of these strange moments in his life is a way of showing that philosophy is not just this reasonable thing. It is also full of detours and you know, abnormal moments. And I think that is what we need to realize. This is why intellectuals also must be more creative.
Exactly.
As I keep saying.
Sometimes a madness is behind.
Acknowledge your madness.
Yes, and this is a big advantage if we are conscious of it. Yeah. So, but so perhaps we could return a little bit to the place, but at this time to the place in where you present your installation, because I would like to ask you what are the most important criteria for you when you are choosing the place where you create the installation and the exhibition space, especially the exhibition space. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I don't have a preconception about that. I just see the opportunity emerge and I get it, you know, like the one in Wrocław, that was the previous one of this Don Quixote. It just happened because the people who had invited me wanted that to happen, so they made the contact with the gallery. And so then I say, yeah, sure, I'm very open in that sort of decisions. I don't choose beforehand where I want it. I just wanted to have space, I wanted to have the screens, I wanted to be possible for people to see it. And so in my website you can see actually the 5 links to the previous installations of this Don Quixote, and soon there will be a 6th one, I hope. And you can see, and they're all very different. And it all depends on the people who host it, who propose it, who say, let's do this. And so I'm a very, how to say this, dialogic person. When someone comes to me and says, shall we do something? Then I say, yeah, maybe this, and but I don't impose. I don't impose. The only thing in the Don Quixote is that I have 16 screens, and so that I need. But there were also moments that there were no 16 screens, and so I had to do it with 9. And that happens also. But it is very, for me, it's another encounter. For me, encountering indifference is the most important thing in my work, intellectual and creative. And I feel that that creativity there intervenes. When someone comes up with a project, I take it seriously. And I don't always say yes, but I do take it seriously. And that is how I have had really wonderful places for exhibitions, just because people came up with it, and I thought, oh, yeah, I can do this there. So I don't determine beforehand what I'm going to do there. But, yeah, I had a show in a museum in the south of the Netherlands that's closed after 2 weeks because of the corona and lockdown. Very sad, because it was a beautiful exhibition. And there, again, someone, a former student, came to me and said, shall we do a show in that museum? Why not? Why not? And so we decided to do that, and there's even a book that came out of it, and it was a wonderful show. But 2 weeks later, finished because of the corona. What can you do? You just have to live with that. But the place was wonderful, and I still believe that it was a great show. And so this is, I guess I have an open mind for proposals. So if you have an idea, come and propose, and I'll take it seriously.
Yes, and you always respond to the situation. Or
Yes. Yeah,
it's and always this creativity and critical.
Yeah, even in that sort of decision making, you have to be creative.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but how about the choice of topics you touch upon? In which way you chose it? And sometimes I know that you chose a topic, a literary topic, as Flaubert or Cervantes.
Yeah, how I come by the topics. First of all, I made a lot of documentaries. The first phase of my work with video is documentaries. This family, Muslim family that I told you about, but then there were other opportunities to make documentaries about issues of migration, identity, foreignness, cultural difference, and all that. And I did a lot of those. With the last one, this was so funny, that I somehow encountered a 3-year-old girl who was half African and half Russian, in fact, but lived in Paris. And she was so creative. I met her, I had dinner at her house, and I met her and I thought, wow, this kid knows what to do socially with fiction. Because she was half African, and she had this African curly hair, but blonde. And so everybody on the street was constantly saying, oh, your hair is so special, and she couldn't stand it. So she came up with fiction. And she said, well, I saw this witch this morning, and her head flew away, and she tells stories. And I thought, well, if a 3-year-old can do that, then we should also be able to do it. And that's when we started to do fiction. And the first fiction film was based on psychoanalysis, as I said, psychoanalysis of trauma, and with the 2 psychoanalysts actually playing major roles. And then when we had the vernissage, the beginning, the opening of that show, of that film, we had in some theater somewhere, Michelle Williams-Gamaker and I were sort of a bit sad you're a bit sad with an opening, because then it's finished. And we said, what do we do now? And I said, well, maybe Flaubert's novel, Madame Bovary. Oh, so let's reread that. And we reread it, and she did. And we said, yeah, we can do that. And so we did that. So it was a sort of almost arbitrary choice, except that it had been my favorite novel all my life. I had read that as an adolescent, and then later I'd written about it. I thought it was a great novel. So, and then, of course, I discovered Flaubert's misogynistic attitude to women, which is a bit scandalous, but he was able to fictionalize the issue of a woman entrapped in housewifedom, while he was not interested in women at all. He was very misogynistic, but he saw that problem as a social problem. And that's how he came up with this emotional capitalism, as Eva Illouz then called it. And so for me, that was a very important step. And of course, I already explained that the Don Quixote came about because the actor wanted to do it. And so there's always, of course, I don't do just anything. There's always a reason why I think that's a particularly important issue. And Madame Bovary, was important because of the feminist issue and the economic capitalist and all that. But Flaubert invented that decades before Marx came up with capitalism and Freud came up with hysterical women that he diagnosed. And so for me that was a very good way of addressing that novel in a different way and making it more up to date for our life now. So I don't have particular reasons. I'm not searching for a source. It comes to me.
Always.
It comes to me, yes. Yeah.
So, but I'm thinking about some perhaps connections, similar elements of the work by Flaubert and Cervantes. About one thing that I said at the beginning of our interview, about this element that now the rather corporation, commercial impose on us this manner of view the world, of our behavior, in which way we have to be happy, and I think that some problems that Flaubert discusses in Madame Bovary and Cervantes in Don Quixote is the problem of the influence of literature and arts, today media, on our manner of understand the world, of perceiving themselves, of course. And this is perhaps interesting issue. I don't know if you was thinking, you were thinking about it, preparing your project about this element, in which way art can impose our way of thinking, because I think that is important, especially today with the media that imposed.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right that that's a big issue. And one of the things that recently happened is that a very close friend in the US, who is an art historian and an art theorist, who has written about Panofsky and about all the big shots in art history, she lost, for the second time she lost a son. She had lost one when he was 14, the little one, and now this one was towards 60 and he died of cancer that he had had for a long time. And so I was, of course, very empathetic with her, and I thought, what can I do to help? And I sort of encouraged her to write a book. I said, maybe if you write another book, you will be distracted from this grief. And she did. And that book is coming out anytime now with Edinburgh University Press. And it's going to be on the work of art. And that's why I come up with that work of art instead of artwork. So the work that art does. So the whole environment in which images are so frequent and so important. And my daughter wrote a book about urban screens, about the way in the city there are always screens, and what do you do with that? And so I was interested in that. And I think that the imposition of imagery in the world is something we have to resist, but also live with. And I think if we let the art or let the screens or let the images do their work, they are alive, and then we are not victims of it. And I think that is important. This is why we have to resist this imposition. And I think that with these cultural heritage works, novels like Don Quixote and Madame Bovary, it is the fact that the past is in the present and is active there makes it possible to deal with that overwhelming visual and literary and all the in the journalism and all those impositions of ideas. We can resist them, and I think that is really important. And for me, that is also a way of allowing literature and art to do their work, and letting them do their work, and being an interlocutor instead of a passive public. See, I think the idea of a passive public, the public comes in and they look and they go away, and it's not. It doesn't help them, and doesn't help the art. We need to let the art do their work in interlocution with the visitors who are not a public but who are participants. And I always say that the curator is a co-maker of the artwork, but the visitor also. The visitor is in interaction. And I think if that happens, they can change their minds about their own fixed positions. So a lot of people have fixed positions in politics, for example. They always vote on certain parties and all that. And you can loosen that up by letting art and installing art in a way that lets it be activating rather than activist. So I'm not so interested in a show about the environment or the climate that is only showing that. I want art not to be active, not to be just giving you something that you have to accept, but to let it activate you, so that you, as a visitor, start to think, and you become an interlocutor, and you have an opinion that you then change because you see something that makes you change it, and that's the role of art.
Yes, and I think that this connection between a novel by Cervantes, Don Quixote, and your installation has something provoking inside, because we know everyone Don Quixote from literature, from cinema, cartoons, etc., etc. So I think that each of us has his own image of Don Quixote, but we have also this background, this cultural context, and hundreds of reading of these books. And when we are in the gallery and we look at your installation, I think I can say, of course, about my own experience with your installation. But it was my first thing. It was which correspondence I can find with the Cervantes, this novel, the background, perhaps some biography of Cervantes, not only the Don Quixote, and your installation. And later I starting to watch it, to think about each episode, because we have 16 episodes, very complex, very captivating episodes. And I try to understand where you are going with your ideas about Don Quixote and what you suggest, or perhaps what you would like that we try to find some connection or not connection, or just think why Cervantes, why Don Quixote in this context of this 16 episodes and the photo, and finally, who is Don Quixote today?
Yeah.
And which role he can play?
Yeah. No, but absolutely a very good question, and no answer is possible. But I think it is important to realize that, you know, when you get an idea, someone asks you, like in this case, Mathieu, the actor, asked me to do a Don Quixote. Let's do a Don Quixote. Okay, we do a Don Quixote. How do you do that? Well, the first thing I do is to reread the novel. So I take the novel up and I reread it, and I thought, oh my God, I didn't remember that the novel is so totally crazy. And that there is no linear story, that it is episode, episode, episode. So I had to work with episodes. So it is really the novel that inspired me to do it in the way I did it. And then it also, when you have decided that the linearity is not in place, shouldn't be linear, then you have episodes. But then the whole idea of completeness disappears. I don't have to do the whole novel. It would have been impossible. I would have had hundreds of episodes. I think 16 was enough, and it was not necessary to do them all. But episodes that are significant for what happens with this guy who is sort of mad and tries to be helpful, but in fact destroys things and does it wrong and all that. And that was the point in this case of deciding to do it so in these episodes. No linearity is possible with this novel. And when I was, you know, working with our actors and people, and I said, you know, you all have to reread the novel. Of course, they had to reread the novel, and they also, and sometimes they laughed out loud because it was so ridiculous what was happening that they just laughed. Well, fine, you know, just laugh. And there are certain episodes in the installation where you can also just laugh. What's wrong with that? But there is no line. There is no, you cannot say this novel is about this and that's it. And I thought that was really important, to make an installation where the chaotic nature of this work would come out. It had to be chaotic. And I think that what they did in the gallery, what Wallach and Ella did in the gallery, is very, very wonderful way of dealing with that episodic nature. You have these screens and they are set in a circle, but you don't know where you start. You just start anywhere. And so there is no beginning and there is no end. And that makes the chaos of the novel stand out. And I thought that was a really good way of doing it. I had never expected it. And when I first heard that they do a circle, I thought, oh no. But yes, it works. And that works because it doesn't have a beginning and an end. It is, you're sort of embedded in it. And I think for visitors, for these participating visitors, that is what you do. And so that's why I insisted that there would be chairs, so you can sit, and sometimes people sit there and watch the same film several times. That also happens. And I know in Småland, in the museum, when we had the first exhibition of this project, there was a woman with her little son. And the woman was like this, riveted, looking, and the son was rolling on the floor laughing. He just had so fun because he saw the scene with the little dog, and you know, he was just having so much fun. And the woman was very, and so that difference in responses, I think, is really important.
So everyone responds in various way, and
Yes.
because the background is very different for little child and for us.
Right. No, but the interesting thing, of
Yes.
course, is that the child was not
Yes, this
bored.
perception. Yes, exactly.
He was having fun with it. Well, fine, you know.
Yes, great.
Yeah.
You activate everyone in various ways.
But you have to realize that there are very few things that I decide on my own. I mean, I do write the scripts, of course, and all that, but I don't decide on my own. It's all a matter of things coming together with the chance, with the people, with the encounters, with the dialogues, and I don't project. I'm not a filmmaker sitting on a chair and saying, do it again, do it again, do it again. I've seen that happen. I'm not that sort of director. We just
wonderful.
And every day, at the end of the day after shooting, we sit together with the cook and the makeup artist and everybody who participates, and we discuss the day and how it went, and you know, this is just a very productive way, and I so enjoy that, this encountering. I enjoy that so much that for me that's what I do.
So this is absolutely great, but when I look at your installation, I was sure that you prepare it many months with the scripts, because it's so provoking to thinking, to ask the question, why and how, in which way I could interpret it, to find a connection with the novel, with today's culture, with the past, present, and perhaps for the future, something for the future, some message for the future. Yeah. So that's absolutely amazing. The result is extraordinary.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you say that, because for me it is important that it's open in that sense. Yeah. And I'm not dictating what you should think. And so I'm not saying this has to go there and this has to go there, and every installation is different, and that is the point.
Yeah, this is great.
That is the point. The chaotic nature of this novel comes across in the installations. And that is the only, let's say, equivalence between the novel and the films, is that point that is so important in the novel, but people don't see it, they don't say it. Don Quixote, you know, is the mad knight, and he does things and all that, but they don't realize how crucially based in trauma this novel is. Yeah. And you realize that Cervantes was a slave for 5.5 years, captured in, you know, when they were coming back from a victory with the boat, with the soldiers. He and his brother were captured by commercial slaveholders who just sold them to the men, you know, who had the slaves. And that is totally, of course, he was a gifted guy and he wanted to be a writer, and he was captured and enslaved 5.5 years without knowing he would ever get out. Imagine. Imagine also that temporal aspect, that it is endless and you don't know if you ever get out. And then shall I tell the story about the brother? His younger brother was 2 years younger. He was 24 and the brother was 22. And Rodrigo, the younger brother, was also enslaved. And the rest of the ship, they went back to Spain and they celebrated their victory. And these two guys were slaves. And then the parents, who were not rich enough to pay the redeeming fee, because these corsairs required a fee, they didn't have, so they started to beg with the church and to ask for money. And then when they had enough for one, they sent it to Miguel, and they thought he's the oldest one, he gets out first. Imagine what Miguel did. Gave it to Rodrigo. Said, you go first. Now, I think that is a shocking act of generosity. When you are so completely frustrated in slavery, and then you get a chance to go out and you let your brother go out. The tragedy was that 2 months later Rodrigo died in another battle, but that's a different issue. But Miguel had to stay, and so this is what this motivated me enormously to make this project.
Yes, for this reason I was thinking about biography of Cervantes.
Yeah.
Because I saw that this episode about slavery.
Yeah. No, it is. There is a wonderful biography of Cervantes. I don't remember the title, but the author is Maria Antonia Garces, a Colombian historian who worked at Cornell, and that's where she wrote this biography, and it's wonderful. It won awards. It was very respected. That's worth reading, because then you realize the incredible. I mean, it's hard to realize because we don't know that personally, but to realize what it means to be a slave and have no sense of an ending to that situation, that is so incredibly traumatic that it motivated me enormously in this project.
Yes, and you write a lot about this trauma issues and about compassion and empathy.
Yes.
That is important when someone is at the gallery and look at your installation, and you also talked about empathy as a tool to activate your the participant. I would like not to say the public or others, but participant.
Yes. Empathy is called for in this kind of video installations where you see really suffering. You see suffering. And so the participants, visitors, participants, feel that. And if you feel that, if you feel how difficult and painful it is for these figures, you are able to have empathy, that is suffering inside the other. And I think that is very valuable as a way of experiencing a kind of otherness that you're not used to. You always think that you know what your life is, and suddenly you're in something else. And that is, I think, very important. And the whole idea of compassion, it's the same word, is suffering with compassion. And that is, is practically the same thing as empathy. And I think that is really important to teach that and to learn that as a citizen in this world. Because we see all the time, we see misery, and we have on television every night you see these rebels in Gaza and in Kiev, and these horrible situations, and suddenly 100,000 are killed, mass murderers. Warriors are mass murderers in a sense. And to have the possibility to teach, to show, to let the art do the work of making you feel that, I think is very socially very useful.
Yes, and crucial, I think, for us today.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, so I think that we we don't have too much time. Perhaps the last one question from me, before to give the floor to our public. In 2014, Dorota Filipczak asked you some questions for her interview about your future projects. Oh yes, your answer was, I can never talk about future projects because I don't have them. So it is still the case?
Well, this is the thing. I know that as an academic, I'm supposed to have a project, and I get a book contract, and so be reassured, I will write that book. But future projects, the art projects come about when something happens. I don't have a project for it at this point I do actually have one in Spain, but that's because they asked for it, and it's still very open if it will happen. But I don't develop projects I don't sit down and think, now I'm going to make a new film. It doesn't happen that way. I just do what comes along. And so I have no future projects. And I know that Dorota did this wonderful interview, and we very much regret her passing. But she thought that I had a whole list of projects. I don't. I never do. I never do. So I develop my ideas as they come along. And my early work, you know, you mentioned this book from
74.
74. That's my first book. My very first book. And, you know, I just encountered it. I think I wrote my MA thesis about it, about that novel, about how that novel was meant to be just a story, and it became very complex in its sort of engagement with popular issues. And so projects happen to me. They just come along, they happen.
So perhaps the new one will happen here in Lublin?
We could do. Come up with an idea and I'll be game.
You had a whole week to see Lublin.
Well,
so
I was very busy with other things, like workshops, seminars, lectures.
Yes, I know.
But I'll come back and then we'll develop something.
Yes.
Okay, is that an idea? But I cannot do it on my own, because this is the thing. I don't believe that I can do anything on my own.
But you know, you have many new friends here.
I do.
And we become the old friends soon.
No, this is why I'm so fond of this country, because I constantly make new friends, and I realize how important that interaction is, and the encounters, and these friends remain friends, and that is wonderful. And I have that experience in Poland particularly, which is why I keep going there, coming back. So maybe I'll come back here, and we'll do a project. And you come up with an idea, and I'll
you know, we are also very creative. We are also very creative, so
yes,
we
you
can
are.
do something.
You are absolutely.
Together, yes.
Yeah, no, wonderful. That would be great. But yeah, for now the week is over, and I cannot develop a project now.
But perhaps in a few days or in a few months,
well,
we will see.
You trigger me.
Yeah.
Just trigger me, and then I'll.
So thank you, Mieke, very, very much for being with us.
Well,
for this
thank you.
Wonderful time.
Thank you. Dziękuję. So, any questions from the public, from the participants?
So please be active.
Well, I've got a lot of questions, but I think that I will pass them into an official part of the meeting. But instead of questions, maybe, I would like to say a few words of thanks to you, dear Mieke, for your presence here, for your visit. I'm sure that this time we spent together helped us to develop ourselves in the field of knowledge, in the field of research, in the field of making art also, because, as you know, part of us are artists in different fields of art. I'm also sure that the input you gave us by your presence, by your thoughts and our discussions during this week is also very important, because it shows us another view, sometimes different, sometimes quite similar, but another view on the same problems, on the same issues we are interested in here in Poland at the John Paul Catholic University of Lublin. And I'm looking forward for fruiting of this meeting, of this week, and I hope really, truly, I hope that this fruitful time will be so fruitful not only for us, our doctoral students and our researchers, but also for you. Not only in the meaning of making new friendships, but also in the way of visiting new place and maybe gaining some new informations about our beautiful country and our art.
Yes, thank
and
you.
I have a small gift for you, which is also a little bit artistic also. I will not open it here, you will open it later, or maybe if you want, you can do it.
Oh, wow. Dziękuję.
Thank you very much.
What is this? Oh my God.
Yeah,
oh my God.
These are two catalogs.
Yes.
One is an architect, Maria Chomentowska, which projected our buildings in
Right.
1980s. And the second one is the man I told you about him, Leszek Mądzik,
Oh yes,
and his
Leszek.
exhibitions.
Incredible. Thank you so much.
Mieke, may I also
Oh God.
accompany my director with acknowledgements? But I will do something contrary to him, because I'm going to show you what you are going to get from me and Gosia.
Oh.
This is a
Oh.
water painting by one of Lublin contemporary artists that depicts, if you want, you can show to the public. This is Grodzka Gate, as well as the place we've been to yesterday with our students. So I hope that this will remind you of our encounters here. And this is really great for us that we had a possibility to host you as a scholar, as an artist, and also as a friend.
As a human being, a friend, yes,
so
which is what you are. And so, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. And I know when I decided to come here for a week, my husband said, "Are you sure you want to go for a whole week?" I said, "Well, it's a bit long, but I'll see." And I've enjoyed every minute of it. I really have. And that is incredible. And that enjoyment, that engagement and enjoyment, collaboration, encounter is very important for me. So I do, as you say, if I learn something from it, a lot. And I wish all your PhDs and students and colleagues the best of luck with their projects, and keep me informed when they have a
We
PhD.
will.
Right. Oh, thank you so much. Do I get this?
Yes, it's for
This
you,
is
of
a little
course.
part of Lublin for you.
Amazing.
Yes, Trinity Tower. Yes.
Myślę, że jeszcze jedno krótkie ogłoszenie należy tutaj zrobić. Ja myślę, że sobie doskonale radzę bez tego sprzętu, ale tak, pod kątem nagrania skorzystam z mikrofonu. Szanowni Państwo, chciałbym bardzo serdecznie za ten tydzień podziękować. Już zrobiłem to pod adresem naszego znakomitego gościa. Chciałbym również złożyć podziękowania władzom Katolickiego Uniwersytetu II za umożliwienie przeprowadzenia tej wizyty. Ona przy wsparciu finansowym z grantu Inicjatywa Doskonałości, uczelnia badawcza. Chciałbym podziękować naszym koleżankom, pani profesor Małgorzacie Gamrat, która jest kuratorem Koła Naukowego Doktorantów, oraz pani doktor Elżbiecie Błotnickiej-Mazur, dyrektor Muzeum KUL, za ich ogromną pracę, bo gdyby nie zaangażowanie pań, to ta wizyta z całą pewnością nie doszłaby do skutku. Podziękowania kieruję również pod adresem zarządu i członków Koła Naukowego Doktorantów, bo wizyta Mieke była częścią tygodnia doktorantów, ale myślę, że może nawet odwrotnie, to ten czas doktorancki był jednym z elementów wizyty pani profesor, bo jak wiemy, ta oferta była bardzo szeroka. Chciałbym za owocną współpracę podziękować również dyrektorowi Biblioteki Uniwersyteckiej oraz panu dyrektorowi Waldemarowi Tatarczukowi wraz z jego zespołem. Dzięki tej naszej współpracy była możliwa wystawa, która też stała się tutaj kanwą dzisiejszej dyskusji, ale ona pojawiała się też wielokrotnie w trakcie wykładów, które mieliśmy okazję wysłuchać podczas tego tygodnia. Drodzy Państwo, bardzo, bardzo serdecznie wszystkim dziękuję za obecność, za ten wysiłek podjęty. No i mam nadzieję, że to jest nie pierwsze i nie ostatnie spotkanie z mistrzami, bo już w maju mamy tym razem w trybie online, ale kolejne spotkanie z cyklu Meet the Masters. Bardzo serdecznie dziękuję i życzę wszystkim dobrego weekendu, zasłużonego odpoczynku.
So, and now you can buy the book and ask our wonderful Mieke to sign the book or to give your dedication.